Welcome to Finance in 5. Is a global currency reset about to happen? Is it closer now than before COVID? Will paper currency be consigned to the dustbin of history? Would people resist its cancellation and replacement with a digital equivalent? How quickly would this happen? Coming up today on Finance in 5. What is currency? Currency is an official monetary instrument used in commerce. It has to be legal tender, which means the government will accept it in payment for taxes. Money is much more questionable because it means different things to different people. Gold enthusiasts would shriek if you dared to declare that gold and silver weren't money. But try going to any coffee shop and asking for 2 coffees in exchange for a silver dollar. Good luck. They'd call you a con artist and or throw you out. Money has traditionally been some commodity, whether it's gold, silver, bronze, cattle, seashells, sheepskins, feathers, beads, slaves. You certainly can't historically declare anything to be money just because of the fact that that changes so much with cultures and with time. And the legend goes that the Gauls attempted to invade the city of Rome quietly, but they frightened a sacred flock of geese who made a lot of noise at the Temple of Juno. This alerted the Romans to the surprise attack which was going on, giving rise to the word Monere, which means to warn in Latin. The Temple of Juno then became popularly known as the Temple of Juno Moneta. Since this is where coins were minted, we arrive at the word
money.
Oh, okay.
I smell money.
Okay.
Chris?
Money, which springs from the origin of this legend and place that was an ancient mint. Terms like capital flow arrive from the Latin word currere, meaning to run or to flow. This is where the money flowed from, and it gives rise to the word currency, meaning the flow of money. This is why Juno Moneta is pictured on Roman coins as holding the balance of scales in one hand and a cornucopia in the other, symbolizing endless bounty or wealth. This is the birth of the terms money and currency. So you can argue with the Internal Revenue Service that gold and silver are money all you want, but they're not going to accept it as payment of taxes. The paper dollar is the currency, and duly states, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So legally, only paper dollars are currency because they're accepted by law, publicly or privately. Nevertheless, you still can't pay your taxes using bills, you have to pay digitally. The assumption that there needs to be this one world government to create a one world currency isn't true. The only political solution, in theory, would be to create an independent reserve currency. This would happen as a result of the debt crisis because countries will have to default on all of their debts. But a reserve currency needs no backing because the value of a currency has always been its image or confidence. Money is just a medium of exchange between two objects. Money is not a store of wealth. On one side maybe you have labor and maybe on the other side something tangible like food. It doesn't really matter. Money historically has never been a store of value, it's only an economic language of exchange. Those who say money has to be a store of value are afraid to invest anything, so they expect money to retain its value, but they also expect wages to rise along with the value of their house. It's just brain-dead self-interest. So money represents the combined collective productive forces of the people of any particular nation. If this weren't true, it would have been impossible to have a floating exchange rate since 1971, or for Japan and China to have become such big economies without gold. Anybody who says money has to be gold should be reminded that history would disagree with them. The gold standard has never been a lasting trend. Floating exchange rate systems have been the norm throughout history, with brief intermissions or attempts at fixing the value of money that always seem to fail. The reserve currency, currently being the dollar, creates political tension with China and Russia because they're forced to use the currency of an adversary. China's currency is still less than 10% of world trade flows, and trade is still a tiny fraction of capital flows. The bulk of the money flows are due to investment. The total US economy of about $17 trillion and the total of China's exports is about $2 trillion, with Europe about $1.5 trillion. The numbers show the reality behind the dollar being the world's global currency. Qatar has got the highest GDP per capita at $102,000. The USA is at $54,000, Germany's at $39,000, France at $35,000. The next step would be to replace the dollar with an international reserve currency. It wouldn't require any backing, just confidence. Such a currency would be exempt from financial mismanagement because it wouldn't be the currency of any given government. Each nation would retain its currency that would float against the reserve. You'd need to convert your local currency to the reserve for international transactions. Reserve currencies aren't new, they've always existed by default belonging to the largest economy. There are numerous contemporary imitations of the dominant currency of any era. When Athens was the biggest economy, their currency was imitated in Asia and in Northern and Eastern Europe. An imitation isn't the same as a counterfeit, because they don't seek to defraud someone but to expand the money supply with the same metal standard. So we don't really need a one-world government to issue a one-world currency. It would only be a reserve currency against which everything else could be measured. No huge deal. In theory, it should end political tensions and allow individual nations to retain their sovereignty, unlike the euro that's been a complete failure. Lots of transactions these days are digital and don't involve the use of physical cash. So for a lot of people, the elimination of cash just isn't a big deal, but it's important to recognize that it does mean the elimination of privacy and the state being able to watch everything you buy and sell. Outside of the USA, many people pay their rent using physical dollars, for example in the Ukraine, because they trust the dollar more than their own domestic currency. As for the question of will paper currency be eliminated, I think it's more likely than ever before now that many shops have banned the use of cash during this outbreak, but not guaranteed to happen overnight and certainly not without significant backlash against it. Many central banks have published papers about their own digital currencies, which remove the need to print paper banknotes. The real concern is the effect that this would have on private citizens. All transactions would become instantly visible to governments, and if necessary stopped or prevented at the whim of the bank, overriding the will of the citizen in some cases, while enabling taxes to be deducted automatically. The freedom of the individual under such proposals is under constant assault. Already banks limit the amount that you can withdraw from ATMs during times of crisis. In an era in which trust in governments is already fairly low on a global basis, will the convenience of a digital currency be accepted blindly? Young people who have used Apple Pay for 5 years might not have a problem. My personal concern is that in the future, if another historic crisis event occurs or something like it, people won't merely accept digital currency, but worse yet, would be so conditioned to surrender their freedoms that they would themselves ask to receive some form of microchip implant to buy or sell things quickly. None of us like to envision a doomsday scenario, but given how much state power has increased with COVID-19, which supposedly occurred during peacetime, it takes very little imagination to consider that the expansion of state power would be far more draconian and controlling of the population in the event of a war. Supply shortages could be everywhere and cash could be banned. This represents a wholesale inversion of how life is supposed to work. The state is supposed to serve the individual and to be subject to carrying out the directives of the electorate and to act in their interests. If the day ever comes that a private citizen was required to adopt a digital currency or be forbidden from working unless or until they did so, it would be a dark hour for humanity indeed. But even without a war, the slide towards digital currency is happening at an inexorable pace. The question is, how do you prepare? A number of options exist which protect your purchasing power. One is ownership of precious metals, and we've talked before on this channel about gold and silver. Another option, if you live in Europe, is to open a TransferWise account and keep some of your savings in dollars. Why would I say that? Dollars are the dominant currency, and on a global basis, capital appears to be fleeing to the dollar. In other words, people are putting their money in US companies. Europe is a basket case because of high taxes and the failing euro. If a digital currency was to be adopted anywhere, it probably would be in Europe first. Europe cancels currencies on a pretty much ongoing and uninterrupted basis, whereas in America, dollar bills from decades and decades ago are still legal tender. Whatever happens, watch carefully, because my view is that over the next 3 to 6 months, much more will be said in Europe and across the pond about the benefits of eliminating paper money. Naturally, the media will remain steadfast in their refusal to speak out on behalf of the people and to warn them of any impending threat to their financial stability posed by eliminating paper money. The risks and hazards will be ignored. But I'd like to be wrong about all of this, but unfortunately, that probably isn't the case. What do you think? Are we getting rid of paper money? If so, when will it happen? And what do you think you're going to do to get ready? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.